All right, guys, I'm going to talk about a band today that means a lot to me. Actually, kind of changed my life at one point or another. Um, I have to make a disclaimer before I talk about this band. Um, Look, this channel is about music. It's about celebrating music, and I don't want to get political. Hopefully this is the only time this is the most you're ever going to hear me talk about politics. But look, I don't care what you think about John Schaefer, about what he did or didn't do or whatever. I don't care. I honestly hate politics. I don't follow them anymore because I think both parties have sold us down the river years ago, decades ago. So I think Washington's a cesspool. I think whatever the machine wants, the machine gets, and it's always going to be that way. Really, this isn't we the people anymore anyway, so I don't care. I don't care. I think this world's on its way out. I think the apocalypse is coming. I think it's time to move on. So, but you know what we do have? We have music to unite ourselves over. And I would have probably talked about Iced Earth probably first or second. It probably would have been my first or second video had people not been talking about what John did or whatever. So look, I'm just going to tell you right now, if I look in the comments and I see people bickering over politics, I will remove your comment. That's not what I'm here for. I have to make this disclaimer because this is sad that there's a band that's changed my life, and I feel like I couldn't talk about them for a while without ruining my channel. But you know what? If I can't talk about something that I love, then I don't even want to do this channel. So that's just have to make this disclaimer. I've met Schaefer plenty of times. I live used to live about 3 minutes from where he was born for most of my life. I've ran across him in local guitar stores. I've had a friend that's done guitar tech stuff for him at his house. Troy Seeley, the second to last lead guitar player to play for Iced Earth. I knew him since I was a kid, worked at a local guitar store, and ended up joining Iced Earth, which surprised me. I didn't know that would ever happen, but it did. So I've got a lot of they're close to home. Let's just put it that way. And I've always really liked that one of my favorite bands was so close to home. But anyway, enough about the disclaimer. So I discovered Iced Earth basically after. So Metallica was probably my first huge favorite band that pretty much changed my life and what I wanted to do with guitar. And when Saint Anger came out, I just discovered Iced Earth around this time. I was like really hoping Metallica would bring something good to the table, and when they didn't, I knew I had to find some new bands. I had to find something else to get excited about. So I found Iced Earth, and I'm like, you know what? If Metallica's not going to deliver, at least there's a band called Iced Earth. I'm going to listen to these guys, and I got into them right after Horror Show came out. So and of course, not too long after, Barlow leaves, and a lot of things started to change for the band, but yeah, they were my second obsession, and the band that changed my life, and actually had lyrics that kind of I was always kind of an awkward guy. I did not like what anybody else liked at school. I just kind of existed. I wasn't cool. I wasn't uncool. I probably wasn't cool, but but I remember hearing lyrics like "Stand Alone" off of Something Wicked This Way Comes, and I remember thinking, dude, this song is talking to me. This is my song. And the band was just important to me. They just were. So Iced Earth for life for me. I can't help it. They're a part of me. They're in my blood. And so all right, so since we're doing a tier ranking video, let's start from the beginning. This video might be a little bit long since I had to kind of go into a little rant at the beginning, but let's talk about the first album, just called Iced Earth. So we have Gene Adams on vocals, and a lot of people kind of think of him as maybe the least favorable singer that Iced Earth has ever had. But the first time I heard this album, I kind of thought that it's like, I don't know if I care for the vocals that much. But to be honest with you, it really grew on me. Now it's like I couldn't picture this album without Gene Adams on it. And he's a cool guy. I think I'm Facebook friends with him. And, he's doing his own thing now. Jacob's Well. Cool guy. But the music, honestly, it's some of the best riffs and musical ideas, I think, in all the Iced Earth catalog. I love it. It's Triplet City on this thing, man. Like, honestly, try learning these songs on guitar. It'll make your wrist break in two. It's great. But yeah, so every track is awesome. It's pretty much proggy, traditional thrash. I don't know what you call this. It's just heavy metal. Let's just call it that. But there's a lot of riffs. A lot of the solos are awesome. I have to talk about Randy Shaver. Schaefer originally had an awesome band. I really wish this could have been his band for this whole career. But he, Randy Shaver was one of the best lead guitarists I think I've ever known. I think he's very underrated. His ideas are just different. Nobody really sounds like him. He has a lot of weird ideas, but they fit so perfectly. I just think he's kind of a guitar genius. But yeah, I don't know. The production's pretty good. It's not one of the best. Matter of fact, I think Schaefer called it garbage pretty much, but I don't hear it. I'd love for my first album to sound like that. I'd love for all my albums to sound like that. But but anyway, I'm really surprised right out of the gate that the musicality is this freaking good. But it's not really raw, but for Iced Earth, it's pretty raw. I'm going to have to give this one. So believe it or not, I'll have to put the first Iced Earth album as Something Perfect This Way Comes. Can't help it. I just really like what's going on here on this album. So next, Night of the Storm Rider. And, honestly, everything here is kind of a more polished up version of the first album, in my opinion, except this is a concept album, a very dark concept album, which Iced Earth is actually a pretty dark band. But so musically it's pretty similar. It's the same triplets and awesome lead guitar work by Randy Shaver. The production's probably a little better by a hair, but they're pretty similar on sound, I think. This one might have a little bit more atmosphere, maybe I don't know, to kind of paint that picture of what the Storm Rider went through. And the vocals on here, so we got a different singer, John Greeley. In a technical sense, Greeley is a big step up. Again, I'm not ripping on Gene. I actually really started to like Gene. He's unique. But I like him. I like him a lot now. But John Greeley was a vocalist that I did not have to let grow on me. He was just right out of the gate. I just liked his voice, and I've met the dude. I actually hung out with him for a summer. We were remodeling a recording studio, and big plans that didn't go anywhere. But anyway, so other than the vocal change, it's really a lot of the same kind of thing, only the songs tell a story. Everything on here is awesome. The acoustic passages on here are awesome. They really add to the story and the atmosphere. I don't know. This thing's a masterpiece. Something perfect this way comes, no doubt. And actually, this is my favorite Iced Earth album, and I don't think that'll ever change. But now we go to Burnt Offerings. This album is a lot different from the first two. It's still got a lot of the complex musical ideas. Still got some of the triplets. Probably not as obsessive over the triplets on this one, but they're still there. The tone is different. I believe this is the first album where Schaefer started using the Larry Groman heads for amplifiers that pretty much got his sound over. It was basically a custom-made amp by Larry Groman. He wanted something more percussive because that's kind of his style, you know, with his picking hand. So he had a custom amp made for him, and it pretty much gave Schaefer his signature sound. Now, the guitar sound on this album isn't quite like the signature sound of the later albums, but it was on its way there. But it has a mean sound. This album just sounds... Okay, so from what I understand is Schaefer never liked this album, really. I don't understand. I guess it's because that time he was mad at the label. He felt like the label was kind of screwing him. I guess it was just a really bad time. I guess he had maybe like a rough tour or whatever. I don't know. There's just a bunch of stuff that he didn't like about that era. I didn't care for the direction of the album, but to be honest, it's kind of a masterpiece. I think it's really, really good. It's super dark, maybe too dark at times. I don't know, but I don't know. Everything on the ideas are probably among some of his most creative. The whole band, by the way, probably the most creative effort by Iced Earth. Period. I would say it's probably their heaviest album. So, I don't know what else to say. This album just sounds hateful. It just sounds like a really, really angry person wrote this album. So, I will have to give this Something Perfect This Way Comes, no doubt. Alright, so now we got The Dark Saga. Now, okay, this album is pretty well liked among fans. I like it too, but to be honest, I really hate to say this. I feel like this one takes a dip for me. And I know like a lot of the members, I know Randy Shaver didn't like the ballads on this album. I don't think he really liked the direction of this album. It's really, really chopped down. It's really, really simplified. Gone are the long, riffy passages of the past three albums. It's pretty much reliant on just a heavy guitar tone with really melodic vocals, and honestly hardly any solos, which to me is kind of a bummer. You got Randy Shaver, and there's some songs that don't even have solos, and you know, while that might be the case for maybe a couple of older Iced Earth songs, like this album does not showcase very much lead, and some songs really just might have as much as a couple of bends, like The Hunter. I think there could have been a little more solos on this album. I'm sure Randy agrees. The ballads are... I don't mind the ballads. I actually think the ballads are pretty good, even if they're... This album is kind of a love story too, by the way, so songs like I Died For You might be a little too lame if you're not into love stories, which, you know... But, you know, you got a song like that talking about love, and then you got a song right after called Violate that's about pretty much getting vengeance on somebody. It sounds like ripping hearts out of chests and watching it beat as they cry. So you kind of get a little best of both worlds there. But there's a lot of the songs on here really only have maybe but 2 or 3 riffs in them, honestly. If you're lucky, you might get 4 or 5 riffs. I kind of like the songs that have a little more to them than this, but that's just me. But if you ever listen to my own music that I have written, you know, it's all over the place and lots of parts, because I just like the roller coaster ride of riffs. But I have to also mention this also has a different vocalist, and probably technically the voice of Iced Earth. If you have to ask me, when you think of the voice of Iced Earth, like what is that voice? It is Matt Barlow by far. He's sang on several albums, and a lot of people would say he kind of sounds like a Paul Stanley. Personally, I think he's like a Paul Stanley on steroids, a really, really metal Paul Stanley. And I've even had people think I sound like him a little bit, but just not as good. I don't sound nearly as good. But anyway, yeah, so this album has the guitar tone really does sound like that Larry Groman sound that he would have for pretty well the rest of the career. But I'll have to give this album just simply Iced Earth. I ain't gonna say it's perfect, because it's not quite. It doesn't kind of live up to what I want from Iced Earth, but it's still pretty good. Now we go to Something Wicked This Way Comes. This to me is like the Dark Saga on steroids. Okay, I feel like this album corrects a lot of stuff. Sure, it might lack in the solo department a little bit, but there's a lot more soloing and leads going on here. Unfortunately, Randy Shawver would leave, so we got a different guy. But you know what? The solos are very good. They're just there to fit with the song, that's to complement. It's not really a shred fest or anything. Lots of good guitar harmonies on this one. I love that. This album has more tracks to it. I believe like 13. It's a weird mixed bag too. It's got sort of the same kind of, you know, just ballsy Dark Saga type songs, but then again, it's also got a little more traditional metal, a little more ballads, if you can believe that. You know, one thing that kind of makes this album weird is that, I'm not kidding, for like the first half of the album, it actually kind of goes heavy song, ballad, heavy song, ballad, heavy song. I don't really understand why it was set up that way. I didn't really think about it till later on. I'm like, that's odd. but everything's really, really good on here. I even like the ballads. You know, Matt Barlow's doing vocals again, so you know the vocal department's amazing. Probably one of my favorite albums as far as vocals. And you know what, did I not mention that Matt Barlow also sang on Burnt Offerings? Did I not mention that? But he did. So I don't know why I didn't mention that. But anyway, yeah, so Something Wicked This Way Comes is probably the main masterpiece of this era of Iced Earth, in my opinion. It was my first Iced Earth album, and I loved it. This one opened up a whole new world to me as far as heavy metal goes. So I will have to give this one Something Perfect This Way Comes. Next, we have Horror Show. Kind of the same style as Something Wicked This Way Comes, only with a twist. It's got the same guitar sound. It's the same heavy songwriting with the triplets here and there, and there are some songs on here that I would consider like epics that do kind of go off and kind of go off from the main idea and get a little more complex. But for the most part, most of the songs are pretty typical verse, chorus, verse type of deal. But I have to mention something about the production on this one. This is probably the best Jon Schaffer's guitar tone has ever sounded, period. The guitars are massive on this album. Absolutely massive. And I don't think Schaffer has ever reached this pinnacle ever again. But yeah, so the production wise, it's beastly. But this album also has a kind of a horror theme, like classic monsters. You know, you've got the Wolfman, you've got Dracula, you know, you've got the creature from the Black Lagoon or whatever. You know, you got a song about Damien, the Omen. So, you know, Phantom of the Opera, stuff like that. Pretty unique idea. The music definitely fits the content pretty well. A great album for Halloween. Fantastic. I always have to listen to it a bunch on around Halloween. So yeah, this one definitely gets a Something Perfect This Way Comes. Now we have some more changes, unfortunately. So 9/11 happened. A lot of changes in the band. Like Barlow felt like he didn't want to do vocals for a band anymore. He wanted to pursue other things. He felt like he needed to do more for society. I don't know. I think he probably should have just stayed with Iced Earth, but he became a cop. Whatever. More power to him. That's really what he wanted to do. So, but we got Ripper Owens to replace Barlow on this album. I remember thinking, Barlow's gone. I get into this band, and now their main singer leaves, and I'm like, oh, but Ripper's joining, because I remember having, you know, Demolition and Jugulator from Priest. So I was like, well, you know, I mean, those aren't my favorite Judas Priest albums, but I think the vocals were really good. So this is kind of cool, and it was kind of hard for me to accept hearing somebody that wasn't Matt Barlow on an Iced Earth album, but it definitely grew on me over time. So this album is The Glorious Burden. As you can tell, 9/11 has definitely affected even the lyrical themes of this album. It's more about patriotic stuff, but it's not just that. It's actually about world history, not just U.S. history. I mean, he's still got songs about Attila the Hun and stuff like that. So, like the Waterloo, and so, I mean, so it's also got, you know, this big epic at the end. Actually, mine comes with a separate disc that has a 30-minute epic about the Civil War, broken down into 3 tracks. This is probably the best thing he's ever done as far as epics. It is one of his most underrated, probably the crown jewel of Schaffer's songwriting, honestly. Honestly, I can't say that enough. But the regular album part of it, the regular songs, are great. The guitar tone might not be as massive, and I'm going to talk about his guitar tone a little bit more for the rest of his discography. It's not as massive as, let's say, Horror Show, but man, it sounds really good. It's tight. I mean, it just sounds absolutely great. All the songs are pretty well what you'd expect from Iced Earth, but there is one song, I get it. When the Eagle Cries is about 9/11, but I never really liked the song. It's kind of more of a, like, let's cry about it. The rest of the songs are more like, let's do something about it. Like Green Face and The Reckoning, which I like a lot more. But anyway, yeah, Ripper does a great job. Definitely kind of the same delivery that you would expect him to do from, like, Priest, but I like it better here. Probably my favorite thing Ripper has ever been a part of, in my opinion. I mean, it's for real. But this album actually has really grown on me over the years. I remember thinking it didn't have Barlow and it wasn't as good as the rest, but now I'm kind of like, dude, this is one of the very best Iced Earth albums, in my opinion, now. So it's really grown on me over the years. So I will have to give this Something Perfect This Way Comes. Now, unfortunately, I know I'm getting a little long-winded. This is going to be kind of one of my longer videos, but Now I'm going to talk about a couple albums that, and I'm just going to lump them together, I think, pretty well, because they both suffer from the same things. Something happened from The Glorious Burden onwards, and I hate to say this, as much as I love Schaefer and his music, the band kind of lost something. So Ripper sang on, so basically it was a two albums that basically covered the Something Wicked This Way Comes story, because that album really just had 3 songs that like a trilogy, and now he made basically 2 albums out of that theme. On paper, this sounds like it should have been amazing. Was it? To be honest with you, I was a little disappointed with these albums. It sounds like Iced Earth. It looks like Iced Earth. It just doesn't feel like Iced Earth. I don't know. The songs are a little bit too ambitious for their own good. They didn't have the staying power of past albums. This should have been a home run. I don't know what happened, but yeah, I don't know. With the exception of maybe a couple of songs on each album, I just don't get these as much. So there was the Framing Armageddon, which had Ripper, and then there was Crucible of Man, which actually Barlow came back for on that album, on the Crucible of Man. I thought, when I got that, I'm like, well, this might be a lot better, because we got Barlow. It might be a little more of a return. It's really not. Like, Barlow didn't even really save this one. I hate to say it, man, but these are probably my 2 least favorite Iced Earth albums, and I'll have to probably put them thawed out Earth. Hate to say it. But he did have a little bit of a return with the next album, Dystopia. It's a little more of a return to form. Unfortunately, we got a new vocalist. It's Stu Block. Look, Stu Block is super talented. He's a great vocalist. I just don't like him for Iced Earth, and I never did. He never really grew on me. To me, Stu Block to Iced Earth is what, like, Dave Padden was to Annihilator to me. Like, I just don't think he worked for that band. And a lot of people love him. There's a few people that are like me that don't really like. I feel like he's trying to look too hard to be like Matt Barlow and Ripper Owens combined. But not as good as either one. I don't know. That's just me. He has more of a modern metal voice, in my opinion, where the other singers kind of had more of a classic metal voice, which I like a lot more. But anyway, Dystopia really sounds more like classic Iced Earth from the 90s. A lot of more dystopian themes, not so much just fantasy. I don't know. I think in the guitar tone I was talking about, I was going to mention something about something that's happened with his guitar tone. It used to be massive, and I just seen it shrink and diminish. It happened with Iced Earth, and it also happened with Demons and Wizards. You can listen to all 3 Demons and Wizards albums, and they just sound like the guitar tone got smaller and smaller and smaller and less impressive. I don't get it. I don't know. I do not like the production of these Iced Earth albums as much as the old ones. I don't get it. I don't get it. But as far as songwriting goes, I will give this Iced Earth. It's very good. I just think if you would have put Barlow or even Ripper and maybe beefed up the guitar tone a little bit, I think it would have been really, really good. Now we have Plagues of Babylon. This album, unfortunately, takes another dip musically for me. It's also got Stu Block. That doesn't do it any favors for me, but unfortunately, I feel like the songwriting got really bland here. I hate to say this. I've really, really tried to let this one grow on me. It's not awful. It's I would say it's probably like my second least favorite, compared to the Something Wicked Part 1 and 2 albums. But the songwriting just doesn't stand out. The riffs just kind of sound like some recycled Iced Earth ideas, with the exception of a couple songs. Just really underwhelming. You know, the sound of the album's not bad. The tone's pretty okay. It's not as good as the old stuff, but I don't really know what else to say about this one. I mean, it's just kind of like picture Iced Earth, but without all the things that make them shine, basically. So I'll just have to put this album as lukewarm Earth. And last but not least is Incorruptible. And honestly, of probably the Stu Block albums, this one's actually my favorite, and I don't know why. This one kind of harkens back to me a little more with 90s Iced Earth and in its vibe. I don't know why I say that. It just kind of does. I still think one thing that I'm kind of missing on this album, first of all, it's got Stu Block, so not my favorite thing. But some a little more thrashy songs. I know it's got, like, was it Seven-Headed Whore? I can't remember. I'm starting something like that. But I kind of wish you had more songs like that on there. A lot of the songs are more slower and a little more ballady stuff. Schaefer seems to like doing that. But I don't know. I think this album was a lot better in some ways than the two before it. But it's still Stu Block on it. I will give this album Iced Earth, though. I think it's good enough for that. But anyway, that's it. That's my Iced Earth tier video. Thanks for watching. See you later.